Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again here on a Monday evening, painting live in the Michael's Community Classroom. We're excited to have you. If you're new to the Plaid classes, we've been doing this for quite a while now. Every Monday, we're here teaching you to make a beautiful painting in just about an hour. So tonight you have a treat because you've got Andy back teaching, and Andy is one of the lead instructors here at Plaid. He's been teaching people to paint for a long time, and you're sure to learn something fun tonight and probably learn some techniques that you didn't already know. So Andy is going to be teaching I Promised You a Rose Garden. So he will dive into that starting right now. So go ahead, Andy, take it away.
Thank you very much, John. And I'm really happy to be back in Michael's Community Classroom with you. And indeed, I do promise you a rose garden. So we will be painting this lovely 8x8 painting tonight. And I'm going to take you through it step by step. But before we get started on this, I want to remind you of a couple of things. I would appreciate it if you would not take your time tonight to type slow down in the chat. That's only going to slow you down because we've got to teach at a certain pace. So I know that no matter how fast or how slow I go, it's too fast for everyone. So just save your keystrokes and try to follow along. If you feel overwhelmed, don't worry about stopping. You don't have to paint along with me. The class recording will be up tomorrow, and you can paint at your own pace, stopping and starting the video as you finish each step. So I want to remind you of another little expression that you're going to hear tonight, and that is, you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. Tonight's painting is rather impressionistic, so a lot of it is just left to chance. When we make a stroke with our palette knife, it's kind of what you get, and you just have to learn to accept that, and there's no specific way that you're going to turn out what some of you would term as a perfect painting. We're just looking for a painting that is very pleasing to the eye, has nothing to do with perfection or doing anything right or wrong. So having said that, we have a white canvas and we need to turn that white canvas into a green canvas. So I'm using FolkArt acrylic paint and bright green. So I'm just going to put some bright green out on my palette, and I'm going to take a large flat brush and I'm going to not dip my brush in water, just right into the paint. And then I'm just going to begin to base coat my canvas, and I'm going to put on a fairly thin coat, and I'm only painting the top of my canvas. I can come back and paint the edges later on. We're looking for good coverage and speedy work right now. So brush on a thin coat, we're going to dry it and apply a second coat. So let's get your green paint out and let's get our canvas painted green as quickly as we can. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do this. And again, you see me, it doesn't matter what the brush direction is like, but you don't want thick paint on your canvas and you don't want ridges. So now that I've covered my canvas, I'm stroking back in one direction and I'm smoothing that out. And then I'm going to set my brush down. Don't put it in water. I'm going to dry this with my heat tool and put a second coat on. So get started on that right now. And then I will be back to talk to you about the next step once we get ours dried and a second coat on. Okay, that's pretty dry, and I'm going to quickly apply a second coat. And I know it's going to take you all probably a little bit longer than it took me, and that's okay. We're going to have time to get this all done. And I love how they say we're going to get our painting done in just about an hour. And John really wants me to get it done in just about an hour.
Yep.
And what I'm going to say is I'm going to do my best to get us through this painting in just about an hour. But I also want you to get that time out of your mind, because no one who looks at your painting is going to care whether you painted it in an hour or it took you 3 days. No one looking at your painting is going to care about how long or how quickly you painted it. They're just looking at what you actually did. So what you do is more important than how quickly or how slowly you do it. All right, so that's just a little nugget of wisdom to put in your back pocket.
And even though Andy tries to scare everyone with his warnings about pace, he does do a good job of giving people time to catch up.
Yes, I know that no matter what I'm doing it faster than you are, because I've been doing it a lot longer than you have. So I try to be compassionate with my time allotment. All right, so I've put my second coat on now, so I'm going to dry mine, and I know you all are still feverishly working on this.
I'm definitely seeing some of our regulars here tonight in the chat, and I can see you all on the gallery view. So it's nice to see everybody back.
And because I was using a heat gun, my canvas is super hot. Okay.
And which one? Got it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm just going to let this cool off, and I'm going to let you all continue to undercoat your canvas. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes there. Just keep working carefully and diligently. Yes, my canvas is hot, but my canvas is hot because of my heat gun that I was using. If you're using a blow dryer, it's probably not as hot. And that bright green is bright green. It's the same color that I painted before. It just looks a little different. So, and yeah, I did use my dryer to dry this paint because we don't have time to let it naturally dry. I wish that I could have you all do this kind of stuff beforehand, but it's impossible to get this many people to do things beforehand. So we just do it in class and make the best of it. So my canvas is cooling down, and I'm going to give you another minute, and then I'm going to do something I don't normally do, but tonight I am going to show you step by step how we're going through the painting. And see that my cohort, Chris Williams, is here with us tonight. So hi, Chris. So I'm going to show you how we're going to put this painting together. So while I'm thinking that most of you might be finishing up, can you tell me, John, are people drying and putting their brushes down?
I think so. Everybody doing okay?
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So if you can watch 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. So turn your attention toward your screen because I want to show you. I took step-by-step photographs while I was painting my painting. So I'm going to just kind of show you what we're going to be doing tonight. And so the first step we're going to do is we're going to add some dark areas behind our design. Then I'm going to show you that we're going to sketch our design on using some chalk. And then we will take our palette knife and we will begin to form our flower shapes. And then we will add some more background foliage. We will add some shading to our roses. And then you can see here, I started to add some pink to the roses. So we're doing that again with a palette knife. And then we will end up with our finished painting. Now, I'm just showing you these were the photos that I took while I was creating this painting. And this will just kind of give you a little bit of a roadmap of where we're starting. So there is no template for this. I'm just showing you photos that I took. So this isn't something that you get to download. I'm just trying to show you that we don't start here and we don't end here. Okay, we're going to start here and then we will move on from our initial background. So I'm going to give everybody just another minute. Is it okay if you don't have a palette knife? Well, that's going to be a big problem because the roses are all painted with our palette knife. So anyway, that's a crucial part of the painting tonight. So if you don't have a palette knife tonight, you can get started with us, but then you'll probably need to go to Michael's and get a palette knife. And this is an RGM Plus size 6 palette knife. And if they don't have it in the store, which I believe they do, but if you can't find it in the store, you can order it online from michaels.com. Love this little palette knife. If you buy one, you won't need to replace it. It will be your palette knife to last you many, many years to come. Okay, so we're going to get started now, and I'm going to use tonight a combination of the FolkArt Pure Artist Pigments and regular original FolkArt acrylics. So I'm going to put out some Viridian, and I'm going to put out a very small amount of pure black. You're going to probably need a Hershey's Kiss of Viridian and just a chocolate chip of pure black. And we're going to do most of this painting with a 3/4 inch flat brush. And I'm going to tell you that it may be easier if you all, just to get you a little bit more comfortable, if you draw your 2 roses on your canvas. So tonight we're just going to draw a couple of circles, and that's going to be the top of that rose. And then I'm going to have another rose over here, and that's going to be the top of that rose. So my roses are at a diagonal. And so if you just want to sketch on a couple of circular shapes, these are not going to last because we're about to paint over them, but this at least lets you kind of see where your painting is going to be located on your canvas. Why the ugly
Looks like
drips?
we're about to paint a martini is what it looks like.
Yes, and why the ugly drips? Well, you don't have to put drips on your painting if you don't want to. I like them. So I'm going to put them on mine. So I'm going to dip my 3/4 inch flat brush into the water. And I'm going to pick up some Viridian on my brush, along with just a little bit of black to darken this Viridian down. And then I'm going to touch my brush into water, and I'm going to make this paint fluid, kind of juicy, so that I can make it move easier on my canvas. So I've got a very, very dark green. It's a greenish black color. And what I'm going to do is just very quickly, let me show you how to hold your brush. Put the tip of the handle of the brush in the palm of your hand, and then grab the brush. And there are going to be some people that like the drips and some people that don't, and it doesn't matter which camp you're in. I'll still love you the same. The star shape, we're not messing with that yet. Everybody just hang on. So we are going to, I'm just going to sketch in a little bit of a dark background between my roses. And you see that doesn't look like much of anything. It's not supposed to be anything. I'm not painting leaves, I'm just painting some dark color on my canvas. So when you start to do this style of very loose impressionistic painting, don't put it in your head that you're about to paint green leaves, because I'm not thinking leaves at all. I'm thinking some dark shapes. So there's going to be a dark green shape up there. And I'm going to spread some of this out down here. And I've got interesting marks around the outside of this dark area. And then I'm going to put another little dark area over here. And I'm going to make this dark area here just a little bit bigger. And then do you see that right there? I just dabbed my brush down. And so now I've created a whole leaf up there. But I certainly didn't spend any time painting dark leaves. I hope you all understand that I'm just dabbing some more dark color because I want some dark color underneath my flowers. And then for those of you that like the drips, I'm going to pick up a little more water on my brush, and I'm going to tip my painting so that it's right reading to me. And I'm just going to dab some of this very wet brush on the canvas. And I'm going to let some of that kind of dribble down. And if you don't like it, don't put it on yours. It's completely up to you. And if I think they're going to be too big and too dark and I don't like that, I'm going to take a blue shop towel and just blot it and absorb some of that excess color. And this looks like it needs just a little bit more encouragement over here. So there's a little bit more water. Okay, so I'm done with the background, this dark color on here. Are we going to put more color on top of it? But I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to make your mix of Viridian plus a little black and just enough water to make it loose, and then apply your dark area. Come back and emphasize the dark. I don't mean to be pointing with my heat gun. Come back and emphasize some of the dark between your roses. And then if you want to add some of the little drips, you can add those. The colors that I mixed were Viridian plus a little bit of pure black. And then I'm just going to take my heat gun and I'm going to dry this. Be cautious when you're drying your drips that you don't blow the paint somewhere. Just let it dry gently. Don't get too close and blow the paint. So you want to let it dry where the paint looks like it would run vertically. Yes, a hair dryer will work. I just love my heat gun because it dries everything a little bit faster. With a heat tool, you just have to make sure that you are not setting your painting on fire or blistering it, because a heat tool can cause your paint to blister if you're not paying attention to it. So go gently with a heat tool. All right, I'm going to clean up my palette just a little bit because I've got some drips water there, and I'm just going to blot this up because I don't need that extra water causing me to have an accident tonight. All right, and again, I don't want anyone to be thinking that they have to paint something perfect tonight, because we're not after perfect, we're after the impression of a rose. So let me just show you this painting up close and personal. Sorry about the monkey cam. All right. When you are looking at this, I'm not sure what people see that they think is perfect. Lots of people will say, his roses look perfect, mine don't look like roses. I don't know how he does this or how he does that. These are just marks made with a palette knife. There's nothing perfect about them. And every time you paint them, they will look different than what you do the previous time or the next time. So there's only, that's a good comment there, Daniel, marks with interest. So they are interesting looking marks, and that's about all we can hope for. But there's no perfect rose here for you to be aspiring to. Okay, so I hope that I'm drumming that concept of perfection out of you. All right, so let's remember that when we started this, I just drew a little bit of a circle here, and somebody was reminding everyone about the star shape. Well, the thing is that it's not so much loosey-goosey as it is not tightly rendered. All right, so if you actually look at a rose, many of the rose petals they come to a point at the outside edge of the rose. So you can add your bits of your rose petals. There's going to be some that come up here, and then some that come out here. So I don't want you to keep thinking that a rose is just a circle, because it's not. So we're going to have some marks that are going to come around the opening of our rose. So if you try to think more angularly, because we're going to have petals that come across the front of our rose, as long as you're not just thinking a circular shape for your flower, you're going to be better off with this, because you're going to have some interesting shapes and angles. And your palette knife doesn't really allow you to paint a lot of curvy shapes. All right, so now we've got some idea about where our roses are going to go, and there was a little bit of a rosebud down there. Okay, so that's what I've got on mine right now. So if you want to take a minute, and literally a minute, and sketch out some rose petals, you are welcome to do that. And don't get too worked up about this, because you're going to cover all of your drawing up in just a little bit. So don't fret about that. So right now we've got some of our dark color on in the background, and we are just kind of loosely sketching our roses on there so that we know kind of where our roses are eventually going to bloom. Okay, so one more minute there, because I know you'll end up trying to draw a perfect rose, and that's not what we're after.
We can't really zoom in, but Andy can hold it up a little closer. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hold it up close so that you can see all of my little chicken scratches on there. And these, you don't want to let your guidelines be your girdles. These are just some marks to kind of give me an indication of where the flower is. And so this flower is aiming this direction, and this flower is the opposite direction. So one is up and one is down. And that's a nice little composition diagonally across my canvas. So giving everybody a chance to get their design sketched on their canvas. Take a deep breath, take a sip of your beverage, and we will get started with our palette knife in just a moment. Okay. So ready or not, we are about to mix paint. So John is going to type these colors into the chat so you know what colors I'm going to mix together. Okay. I'm taking titanium white.
Yes.
And I'm going to add a small amount of berry wine. And then a small amount of Viridian to this. So some titanium white, some berry wine, and then a very small amount of Viridian. So we're just making kind of a grayish color here. It's not particularly a pretty color. It's not hideous, but it's just kind of a gray color. If it's too gray, you can add a little bit more berry wine and make it a little bit pink. Mine's staying a little bit on the gray side, and that's fine, because this is just so that we can establish our rose on our painting. All right, so let me talk to you just a moment about loading up your palette knife. Tonight, I'm going to tap my palette knife into my puddle of paint. So I only have paint on the back side of my palette knife. There's no paint on the front or the top, okay? Only paint on the back. And then I'm going to tap, 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 tap my paint on my palette. And I'm just spreading that paint out a little bit so I don't have much on my palette knife. And the reason I don't want much on my palette knife is you're going to watch. I'm going to try to do this as close up as I can. And I'm going to start up here at the back of my rose, and I'm going to put my palette knife down and I'm rubbing it around on my canvas. Can you see how that paint just barely sputters onto the surface? It does not fill in the entire flower. You can still see green through it. I'm picking up a little bit more paint right here, dab, dab, dab in that little area that I had tapped originally. And so I'm going to come over here and just establish that shape of the rose. And then this is going to start to go a little faster for me because I'm much less concerned about this than you all will be. So there's a big petal coming down across the outside there. Pick up paint, tap, 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 dab, dab, dab on the palette. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to have another petal that's kind of reaching out from the rose. All right, look at that. I'm not filling in my painting. Still see lots of green inside the rose. This is not solid trowel to paint on kind of painting. I'm dabbing, tap, 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 dab, dab, dab that paint off of my palette knife. And I'm going to put another stroke on my rose. That was a little bit more opaque than I wanted, but I'm just going to spread that color up into my rose a little bit. And then I'm going to put in another petal over here. Okay, so that side's looking pretty interesting. And so now I'm going to just come across the top portion of the rose. This is in front of the opening. So you could see now, tap, 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 dab, dab, dab that on. So now I've got the place where my rose is going to be dark in the center, and then there's the back of the rose. I'm not so sure I like that deep V-neck, so we're going to cover some of that up. And it's just that easy to change the shape of the rose. So you see how I changed that? There we are. Sorry, Joanne, didn't mean to drop off. But now you could see when I had that deep V before, and I just dabbed a little bit on there to correct that shape over there. So still loading my palette knife, dabbing it off on the palette so that I don't have too much paint on my knife. And I'm going to just put in another petal over here. And I'm dabbing on my canvas because I don't have too much paint on my palette knife. And I'm just trying to work some of that excess paint off. All right, so my top rose is kind of filled in enough. I can see pretty much where that rose is shaped. So I'm going to give you a minute and a half. Yeah, a minute and a half to mix up your kind of grayish color and to do this first rose. And then we'll repeat it again over here for our second rose. So again, we're not much paint on our palette knife because we don't want to fill in our rose in a solid manner. We want to be able to see through it. And we are just letting this paint kind of skim on to our canvas. And I think I'm really happy with the way this rose is looking because I can see the back part of my rose. I can see the inside of the bowl, which if you think of the rose like a teacup, this is the inside of the teacup here. Then we've got the front of the teacup, and then we've got some of the saucer out around the outside edge. But that's, you know, if you put on your imagination hat, you can really see that that's a rose there. And your mind understands that it's a flower. It's probably a rose because that's the most popular flower and that's what everybody thinks of. And that green stuff that we put behind it, because we have a rose there, your mind is going to transfer those green shapes into leaves, and you don't have to do anything else to make your mind think of those green shapes as leaves. So we've got another minute here to play with that rose before we move on to the other one. But
And
this,
when you're putting the palette knife on, when you're putting the paint onto your painting, is your knife flat against the canvas, or is it on an angle?
It is flat down, flat as it can be.
Okay, don't try to edge it on there.
No. I'm trying to see if I can show you.
Yeah,
see how it is?
That.
It's flat down to the painting.
Got it.
That's how I'm moving my palette knife and it's flat down like an iron.
Good.
Okay, but I want you all to see that this, as unpainted as that is, it already looks like a flower. It already looks like a rose. Okay, so you have now had enough time to do that one rose. Is everybody panicked, or are they ready for the next step, John?
I don't know. I don't see anyone panicked. I think we're good.
Okay, so I'm going to turn my canvas around and we're going to do the same thing. All right, so I'm sorry if you're panicking. There's no reason to panic. It's just paint on a canvas. What is the absolute worst thing that can happen?
That's
You
right.
brush another coat of green over it and you start again. So worst case scenario is not too bad. All right, and just ease up on yourself and remember what I said. You get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. All right, so tapping my palette knife into this grayish color and then tap, tap, tapping on my palette because I just don't want too much paint on my palette knife. Okay, so now we're going to look at this rose down here. And so I'm just going to begin to put a little bit at the back side of my flower. And I'm just smear it around because there's not much paint at all on my palette knife. So I'm going to pick up some more paint, dab, dab, dab on my palette. And I'm going to begin to just pull some of this on to create the opening of my rose. And then I'm just going to make sure that I don't have that deep V. But oh, look at how good that's looking. And you're all are thinking, what does he think is so good looking about that? It's just that I've established the back of my rose and now I'm starting around the front of my flower. Gonna get out there and make sure that we've got an interesting outside shape of our flower. A little bit extra paint on there that I didn't really need. Scrub some of that off on across the front of my flower there. Pick up some paint, tap, 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 dab, dab, dab it on the palette. If you get too much paint, you could stop and wipe it off on your shop towel and come back. You don't have to turn a tiny little problem into a big mess. All right, so I'm also going to come down here and I'm going to do my rosebud. Okay. And so there I've done my rosebud. I know that was so tricky to see that happen there, just a couple of little dabs. All right, so that's what we've got, and I'm going to give you another minute to do that. And I think you all are probably doing much better than you want to admit to yourself.
I can see some people's paintings. I'm going through the gallery and I can see some people. I've got people working on an easel and I can see nice looking paintings here. So this is great.
I mean, they're going to be doing just fine. I am not worried about them at all. So once you have your two roses kind of sketched in with paint, I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm going to dry that to set it and lock it in place. Don't want anything to change this. Okay, we got that hot again. So we're going to let that cool off. And we're doing really good.
Yeah.
With our time tonight. I think we're going to be in just I mean, everybody's going to be okay. I'm not worried about anybody's painting yet because I know that we've still got some time.
So Andy, somebody was asking, can we use this technique to paint other flowers? So I would assume
Absolutely.
so.
Yes, you can. I use it oftentimes to paint sunflowers. Let's see, sometimes when I paint hydrangeas, I will come in and establish this portion of the back portion of the flower or the base of the flower like this. So it works with just about anything. And there are some artists who paint their entire paintings using their palette knife. I'm not that good. Okay, so what I've added here on my palette, I've added 2 different colors here because I did not have Calypso Sky, which is the color I asked you all to have tonight, which is a light kind of aqua turquoisey color. So I've got a color that is a little bit bluer and one that is a little bit of a very, very kind of a robin's egg blue color. So either one of these kind of things, and you're going to see that it doesn't really matter because we're just going to suggest that we have some blue leaves here. All right, so yeah, we've used this sort of technique on a bunch of different paintings that I've taught from time to time. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my number 12 flat brush and I just dipped it into water and I'm making a little puddle of water here on my palette. And I don't know what I didn't clean out of my brush, but my little puddle of water was not clean. So we'll blot that up and there we go, some water here. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of my blues. And it doesn't matter. I mean, this is where you don't have to have the exact color because here I'm just brush mixing these blues together. But if you have Calypso Sky, you can just use that. And then I'm going to add a little bit of Viridian to that just to make it a little bit green. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what I've got on my brush, except I've got a little bit of green, a little bit of blue, and it's fairly wet. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a blue leaf. All right, so I'm going to do that again, much slower for you. I blotted some water out of my brush. I'm going to show you how to make that leaf. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make another blue leaf. So I'm going to dab, dab, dab on the, just tapping down the flat side of my brush, and then I'm going to let it trail up into a point. So I'm not really working very hard, and I'm going to pick up some more green over here, some more Viridian. So I'm making my blue color just a little bit more green. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to dab a little bit on there and make another blue leaf over there on the side. And then I'm going to do some blue leaves down here. So coming in here and I'm coming right up over that rose. Can you see that? There you go. All right, so now we're going to get a leaf point on it. Going to make another leaf here. Dab, 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 and out. Over here, let's make another little leaf. All right, so now I'm going to pick up some bright green and my light blue color. This is just giving me a different color, and I'm dabbing on a green leaf. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to dab on another green leaf. And if you are fretting over this, then you are fretting way too much, because I'm obviously not spending a lot of time on this. And I think those leaves, they look perfectly leafy. So we don't need to worry any more about them than that. All right, so I'm going to dry them. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes to paint some blue and green leaves. And as soon as I dry this, I'm going to start talking about the colors again so I can repeat them for you. Okay, so I started out with my Calypso Sky, or a light kind of blue color, added a little Viridian to it, and I made some, basically some bluish leaves. And then I added some bright green to the mix, and I made a couple of green leaves and just dab those on. Dab, 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 dab. Don't really worry about painting them on. This just gives the suggestion of a leaf shape. I can't think of another way to describe how non-painted this really is. So let's take a quick look again. If you want to see it up close, it is really not much painting to them at all. And in the overall scheme of things, you are not really going to notice them that much. You are only going to focus in on your two flowers. All right, so that's why we're not spending a lot of time worrying about this. Okay, I don't know if where my little bit of feedback was coming from, but hopefully it's gone away. All right, I'm going to give you another minute to work on that before we do our next little thing, which is kind of not necessary, but I think it's kind of fun and adds a little bit to our painting. So if you are done with your leaves, you can be finding your trusty old painting toothbrush. Because yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for fly specking. Yes, the colors for the leaves again.
Andy, good. Yeah, would you mind telling that again for us?
Don't mind at all. It is your Calypso sky, or whatever kind of light blue, island color light blue you have, plus a touch of Viridian. Then we added a little bit more Viridian to it. And then I added some bright green to my light blue to make some greener color leaves. So we've got some leaves that are more blue and some leaves that are more green. And yes, do not be harsh on yourself. There are going to be plenty of people who will criticize your painting without you needing to prompt them in any sort of way. So just kind of, when you show your painting to someone, just say, look what I did. And they'll be excited for you and they'll love it. If you start telling them about every flaw you've had, that's all they're going to see. So let's not feed into that. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fly speck my painting lightly. So I'm going to dip my toothbrush into some water, and I'm going to create a little puddle here on my palette. And I'm going to pick up some of my light blue or my green color that I was using for my leaves. Might add a little bit more of that light blue to it, but I want to make a nice fluid mixture, and then I'm going to test it on my palette. I'm going to aim my bristles at what I want to spatter on, and I'm going to pull my index finger from the tip of the toothbrush backward. And I'm looking to see if I've got a variety of color dots or size dots, and I do. So I'm just going to add some spatters onto my painting, kind of close up to the design, and let some of it just kind of fade out a little bit. And all this is going to do is just kind of soften up the painting and kind of marry it to the background a little bit. So that's how much I spattered. And I can't look at your paintings, I'm sorry. The toothbrush had some of my light blue color on it and a little bit of whatever my leaf colors were from my palette and a little bit of water. So that's what my spattering looks like. It kind of looks like the inside of my painting, and now I've got some of that same effect going at the outside. All right, so I'm going to give you another minute to do that. Don't over spatter. Probably better to have too few spatters than to have too many spatters. We don't want our background looking speckled to death, because it's a painting about roses and not about spatter. Okay, Janet has the right idea. She's not pitched a fit. So she's getting what she's getting, and she's not pitching a fit. Gotta love that. Okay, one more minute on the spattering, and then we are moving on to our roses full speed ahead. Because we've just got a couple of more things to do, and you've already learned how to do one of them.
Everybody's doing great. I can see some paintings, and I think
Okay.
people are keeping up for the most part. So we're all.
Well, and I know that people are doing better than they think they are, because they'll be posting their paintings. And if you want to post it in the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group, you are welcome to post your pictures there. We teach live in that Facebook group twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday at noon Eastern time. And that's where you can find me on the internet for the most part. And a quick review of spattering. I thin my paint down on my spattering, splattering, fly specking, whatever. So I pick up some of my thinned paint on my toothbrush. I aim the bristles at what I want to spatter onto. And then I pull my index finger from the tip of the toothbrush back, and you can see the spatters happen. It, like every other tool that we use with our painting, whether it's a brush, a palette knife, or a toothbrush, it requires practice. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm about to add some darker shading to my roses. So I'm going to use my number 12 flat brush, and I'm going to pick up some berry wine. And I just had whatever was in my brush. I want a little bit of water and a little bit of paint, not too much. Better to have a little less paint on our brush. All right, so here we go. And this is going to go fast, so pay attention. I'm going to darken down in the center of my flower. Blot my brush, and I'm just going to drag that up a little bit. All right, so I've darkened. This is a number 12 flat brush. Use the biggest brush that you can fit in any given area. All right, so I'm now going to imagine where the bottom of the front of my rose is. It's going to be right about here. And so I'm just going to brush some of this darker color on. And you can see it doesn't look like much of anything. I'm going to just scrub that up. So there's almost not much paint on my brush. All right, so I'm going to take that same berry wine and just a very small amount of water. And I'm going to come down here to this other rose, and I'm going to darken down in the back part of my rose, scrub that on, and then I'm going to imagine where the bottom part of my rose is. And so I'm basically stretching this color out onto those outside petals. Maybe a little bit can come up onto the rose.
Andy, if you can stick your arms out a little, well,
There
just,
we go. I'm
a little bit.
sorry about that.
Yeah, there we
Okay.
go.
And then I'm going to darken where one rose goes underneath the other one. Again, a little bit of berry wine, a little bit of water, not much paint on the brush at all. And I'm just going to scrub that on. So one rose is obviously darker than the other. All right. And then we have our little rosebud down here that we cannot forget about. So darken at the bottom of that little rosebud. Okay, well, that was exhausting from shading our two roses. I know you all are worn out, so I'm going to give you another 2 minutes to do that.
So while everyone is catching up, I'm putting in there the name of the group again that Andy mentioned. So Let's Paint with Plaid is a Facebook group, and you can join that. And Andy does a lunch and learn very much like this on two times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And of course, everything is recorded and on demand, so you can go back and see past weeks.
Yes.
Or, you know, any of our lessons. We've got literally hundreds of things to choose from at this point because he's been going.
Yes, we've been doing it
so
for about 2.5 years. And there are literally, I mean, there are hundreds of hours of video instructions within our Facebook group.
Yeah.
So lots of stuff to find there if you're not finding enough wherever you are currently looking. But there's plenty of great stuff there. And we have new content coming every week.
And all kinds of folks are in there sharing their paintings as well. So it's really a great, it's a great and supportive group in there.
It is very supportive, very encouraging. We don't critique each other's work, and we don't badmouth anybody, or you're not in there. All right, So I'm going to give you one more minute to work on this, and I'm going to make sure that mine is good and dry.
Mm-hmm.
The red is berry wine. If you don't have berry wine, you could use black cherry, you could use true burgundy, you could use alizarin crimson. There are all different kinds of things you can use. You don't have to get hung up on having the right color. As long as if you're painting these kind of pinky white roses, you need a dark pinky color. So I'm going to give you one more minute on your, and when I say one more minute, I look at the clock, and when the minute changes, that's your minute. So it doesn't necessarily really mean 60 seconds. It's just until the time changes on the clock. Berry wine.
Yes.
And you can use rose red, you can use whatever you need to get a color that's working for you. And everybody's will be a little bit different. There will be some people that have a different green background on it. So all sorts of things can change. I really liked this kind of emerald green. It's a little bit, I would kind of think of it as like almost like a poison green. So it's kind of fun to have that kind of intense background in this very vibrant, impressionistic painting on top of it. But the time has changed. And do the recordings have the closed captioning? I don't believe they do.
Well, but once they put them on, once they put it up on YouTube, which Michael's does, then you can turn on closed captioning for that. I'm fairly certain. So.
Okay. All right. So 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. I'm going to take and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make a pink color. So I'm going to start with some titanium white. And to that, I'm going to add some berry wine because I want to make a pink color. And the color from my background was bright green. And there was a supply list for this class so that you know exactly the colors that I have or used in the original painting. And if you have those, that's great. And if you need to substitute, then just find something that's close and you'll be just fine. These paints are all FolkArt acrylic paints. We're using a combination of FolkArt original formula acrylic and FolkArt pure artist pigments. All right, so you can see here that I've made a pink color. The pink from my berry wine and titanium white is not a very vivid pink, but it's light enough. All right, so I'm going to tap, tap, tap my palette knife into that pink mixture, and then I'm going to do a little tap, tap, tap on my palette just to help get rid of some of that excess color. And I'm going to start over here on this rose, and let me see if I can hold my painting up. And there we go. That's probably where I need to be working. All right, so I'm going to start with a little pink at the back, mainly around the outside edges. And then I'm going to put a little pink over here where it's coming across the open front of the rose. And I'm loading up my palette knife, but it's still that same small amount of paint. You can see that I am not covering everything up. All right, then I'm going to take some of this and I'm going to come across the front of my rose. I'm going to reach out on some of these outside petals. Do you see that I'm still leaving some of that dark pink showing? Yes, you can still see some of that dark pink. I know you can. Not too much paint on the brush. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do on here is I need to make this area right here across the front of the rose a little bit brighter. So I'm just going to put a little bit more paint on there. Okay, so if we're looking at our painting right side up, that bottom rose is done with this pink color. Okay, I'm going to do the top rose and then I'm going to turn you loose for another minute or so to do your painting. We're going to do the same thing on this rose that we did down here. So pick up paint on our palette knife, tap, tap, tap it off. That's what I'm doing. When you're not seeing my palette knife, I'm over here tapping on my palette. So I'm going to push a little bit of this color on, and you can see it's nowhere near perfection. These are not Cotman acrylics. These are FolkArt artist acrylics, the FolkArt original formula acrylic paint and the FolkArt pure artist pigments. All right, so now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put this color on across the front of my rose. Tap, 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 and dab, 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 and I'm pushing this color on. And then we're just giving this rose a nice pinky glow. Some across the front there, a little bit over here. Too much paint on my palette knife there, so I'm wiping some of that off. And we come over here and tap some of this on. Okay, so there are 2 roses with the pink color on them, and we're almost done, but I'm going to give you a couple of moments to do this. So it certainly didn't take me 2 minutes to do that, but I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do yours. So you get a minute for each one. Every brand of acrylic paint has a different kind of resin system to it. They have their own unique properties. Some are formulated to be thinner, some are formulated to be thicker, some have a different color range to them. I find the FolkArt original formula and the pure artist pigments to be what I want my acrylic paint to be. And I've used the FolkArt original formula actually since before it was called FolkArt, back in probably the mid 1970s. Oh, yep, the little rosebud. We can put a little pink on that. Thanks for reminding me. There we go. So that took all of a half a second to do that. So going to give yourself another minute, and then we unfortunately are going to run over by about 5 minutes tonight, but that's about it.
I guess I'll allow it.
Okay, well, we're not going over a half an hour or anything like that.
We would never do such a thing.
I think we have.
I think we have too.
Yes, but no, it's not tonight. I try not to make John stay out after curfew. Listen, I'm telling you, this RGM Plus, this size number 6 palette knife is absolutely phenomenal. I love this little palette knife for painting. I have a different, bigger palette knife when I'm mixing up big quantities of paint. But this little one is great for painting. So I highly recommend it. And I don't know that these are happy little accidents or happy mistakes or whatever. It's, you just get what you get. It's just how the paint came off of your palette knife. All right, so I'm gonna dry this really quick while you all are finishing yours up.
Oh yeah, I can see some. Nice, very nice. People are holding theirs up. I like them. Look great.
I know by the time I get home that people will already be posting theirs to the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group, and I love that. All right, so I'm letting mine cool off, and you all are still working away on yours. You've got another minute or so. And I know this has been, I'm glad that some people are thinking this has been super fun. And while other people say they've been panicking, I can't even imagine why this would cause a panic attack tonight.
Be no panic.
No, this is not any, I mean, I think driving in heavy traffic is worse than this.
I would hope so.
And I am one of those people, you know, John knows what Atlanta traffic is like. And so some people will say, doesn't the Atlanta traffic drive you crazy? And I'm one of those few people that it's like, it's going to take me however long it takes to get from point A to point B, and stressing in between doesn't make the trip any shorter or any easier. So I just mellow out on my
there you go.
drive. Okay, Deidre wants me to do a 3-hour class. I do a 3-hour class once a month in the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group. It's called Master Class. You can see in the group what we do there, but I'm going to show you how to do what I call light up a painting. Okay, so I've got my titanium white here. I'm not mixing anything into it. If I wanted to, I could mix a little bit of pink into my white just to make sure it's not stark white, but I think this is going to be fine. So tap, 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 dab, dab, dab. I might have a little bit more paint on my palette knife this time because I'm putting my final big petals on, and I'm going to try to keep my painting kind of in this general area while I put this on. And I'm going to put a little bit of light paint out there at the edge of my rose. Okay, can you see that? There you go. All right, I'm not going to put any more at the back side of that rose. I am going to flick some on here at the front of the rose. Tap, 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 dab, 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 and another little flick of the palette knife there. And look at what that's done. That has really started to highlight the front of this rose. So I'm going to take paint on my palette knife, and I'm just going to kind of lighten up this, what we would call like the bowl of the rose. That's the front of the rose. And then I'm going to start to add in some of these petals that are reaching out from the rose. They're falling open. Tap, 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 dab, dab, dab. Not too much paint on my brush. It's not even a brush, it's a palette knife. Doesn't matter what you're painting with. Tapping some of this on, leaving some of those little angular bits showing. All right, there I've got a little hole right here that I want to put a little paint in. I'm gonna pick up a little paint on my palette knife, dab, dab, dab the excess off, and I'm just gonna dab that on there, filling that in just a little bit. All right, so I'm leaving this in shadow here. Before somebody tells me about the rosebud that I've forgotten, boom, I've highlighted my rosebud. So that rosebud's not anything but a couple of dabs of paint. And now I've got my big flower up here. So still with my titanium white, I'm gonna start highlighting the back part of the flower, leaving that alone. That's all it needs back there. You probably need to paint a lot less than you all want to. Dabbing that paint on around that front of that rose. Look at how neat that looks. That's amazing. Just a couple of strokes with your palette knife. And I'm sorry, Linda, don't mean to be dropping off there. I'm just into what I'm doing and trying not to lose you all. So I'm just scrubbing some paint on, getting it bright across the front of the rose. And Chris is like, but wait, there's more. It's like the Ginsu knives. It makes hundreds and hundreds of julienne fries. Okay, so there's a little bit of an angular petal going on there. And if I want to, I can pick up a little bit more white on my palette knife, and I can make sure that I set one rose on top of the other just by stroking a nice sharp edge of white on, right up next to that shadow. Remember we left that rose in shadow? Now look, this flower sitting up on top of that other one. Tap, 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 dab, 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 that excess paint off. Highlight a little bit across the front of the flower there. I hope you are hearing what the words I'm saying as I'm doing this. Tap, 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 dab, 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 come across the front. I've not said I'm trying to paint a flower petal, because I'm definitely not doing that. I'm just giving the illusion of where a petal might be. But this is far from trying to paint individual rose petals. So I promised you a rose garden. I didn't promise you a rose painted with individual flower petals. Okay, now I'm thinking that looks pretty good to me. And so before I mess it up, I'm going to stop. But I do have one other little thing to paint. So I'm going to demonstrate this while you all are finishing up yours. I'm going to take some of my light blue color and some of my green from the background. So I'm just creating a little bit of a lightish green color here. And I'm going to paint in a stem for my rosebud. I've got to get a little bit lighter color going on there. I got too much water and not enough paint. So it's mainly light blue and bright green. And I'm just going to stroke on that little stem for my rosebud. And then I'm going to, with whatever's on my brush, just add a couple of those little calyxes onto the rosebud. So just dab, dab, dab those on. All righty. So this completes our rose garden.
All right. Let's see. Hold on for a second. Yeah, I'm going to put it on me. Let me see. I'm going to put it on gallery view. So Andy, well, no, I can't do that.
You can't do that.
I can't do that for
see.
you. I can only do it for me. I was going to say, I'm going
Okay.
to put on gallery view so you can see everyone's paintings, but I can't do that for you.
No, I can only see your paintings when you post them in the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group using the hashtag Let's Paint Challenge, all one word, no apostrophe.
There you go. So
So
let's
it
paint with
is-
plaid in the Facebook group, and then do the hashtag Let's Paint Challenge, and then all of those will come together. I can see a bunch of really, really nice ones. So
And I know that they're out there, so I can't wait to see them all. And I promise you a rose garden. If you don't like this one, tomorrow paint another one.
and speaking of painting another one, let's talk about what next week's class is, shall we?
Okay, are we overhead or front view it?
Well,
We're
can
front
probably-
view. Okay, so next
view,
week,
yeah.
there are two paintings. It is the Mini Floral Duo, and this will be taught to you by Kirsten Jones, no relation, although she is a really nice gal. So again, the Mini Floral Duo, she will be teaching next Monday night right here in the Michaels Community Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what she's teaching, and I know that you're going to love it and love painting along with Kirsten. She's so much fun. So that's what we've got, John. And then
Okay.
next month, I'll be teaching a little seascape, which will show up in the Michaels schedule of classes if you just keep scrolling on down.
Absolutely.
Okay,
All right,
so that's
guys.
what we've got. So thanks, everybody. So glad that you joined us tonight.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.